guys and welcome to FAQ Fridays. Today I am answering the question, how do I encourage my gecko to eat? Obviously I've already done the video on 20 reasons your gecko isn't eating, so if you haven't seen it already, go and check that out because I'm sure that'll help you right now. So if you've already watched that, you're still not totally sure why your gecko isn't eating, or your gecko's being really stubborn and you just want to figure out a way to get them to eat, I'm hoping this video will help. Now there's loads of different techniques you can try. Not all of them will work. Some of them contradict each other. It really varies depending on the gecko you're working with. For example, the first technique is to prevent the food from moving too much. If a gecko is used to eating something like mealworms, they like something that moves quite slowly, and if you suddenly give them crickets, that can be quite overwhelming. This is where I kind of contradict myself. Because sometimes if you have a slow moving prey or something that simply doesn't move at all, your gecko will just ignore it, or like Diego, they will just stare at it for ages.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
So in this case, it's good to nudge it with your finger or with a tweezer, or get it to run past your gecko. That sort of way, it tends to get your gecko's attention a bit more. Similar to the last point, you can also get the food to be further away from your gecko. That way I find that they can focus on it, they use their sight a lot more, and they can stalk it. However, sometimes it helps for the prey to be close to your gecko, so your gecko can just sort of lick it and kind of pick up the molecules in the air and taste the prey. All of that goes back to their Jacobson organ, which is on top of their mouth, and that sort of tells them what's in front of them. So sometimes it works to be further away, sometimes it works to be close. It's all about trial and error. You can also try giving your gecko one waxworm. Now this doesn't always work and it's a little risky because you don't really want your gecko to just eat waxworms when it's refusing food, because it will just make it more stubborn. But sometimes if you give them one waxworm, they go in a bit of a feeding frenzy and they're rushing around striking at anything. So if you give them a waxworm and you suddenly put in a cricket, they may think, oh, is that a waxworm again, and bite it, and they've got some food. So, you know, it's worth a try, just don't do it too often. You can also cut a mealworm in half. Sometimes if you cut it in half and its insides are coming out a little bit and you get your gecko to lick it, sometimes they can get that taste for mealworms again. But be aware that some people are allergic to mealworms and their insides, so you may need to wear gloves. Also, some food like mealworms or roaches are best given in dishes rather than running around, because they can get under substrate or they can just generally stray away from your gecko's vision. So if you put them in a dish, even if your gecko's not used to it, they will get used to it in the end. As you can see, Gizmo did struggle a little bit, but she did get some food in the end. Another thing to think about is some geckos will prefer to have one cricket at a time, whereas some prefer multiple crickets. So sometimes when you have quite a few crickets, they sort of nudge each other and they get more active. So that's great, but sometimes that can be very overwhelming for a gecko. So once again, trial and error. If I did one cricket at a time for Diego, as you saw, he didn't really react. But later on, I put a load more in at a time and he went crazy for them. So yeah, they're pretty much all the things I can think of at the moment on how to encourage your gecko to eat. Sometimes your gecko will just stop eating and it's really frustrating. It gets you so stressed out, I totally understand. But all you can do is just try little techniques, and as long as you're not hurting your gecko, just be creative about it. Think, what can I do to get the interest back with food? Sometimes though, it can be as simple as changing the food that you're feeding the feeder insects. Another thing I would suggest is keeping note of their weights. I've done this throughout my geckos' lives, and with Gizmo, I could actually look back at 2008, 2013 and 2015, because these are the years I probably covered her weights the most, other than when she was actually growing. And if you look at April, they all start off between 50 and 60 grams. By June, they've all hit the lowest point. And then by August and September, they're back to their normal weight again. Like, that's crazy. I didn't even realise this before. I knew she did something similar in 2013, but it's only recently when I just looked back that I realised she actually did that in 2008. She probably did it in the years between that. It's just I didn't write down all the dates as much, so I couldn't compare it as well as these other years. But with that, even though I still get stressed out when she doesn't eat, I can now realise that, okay, this is her pattern. She'll stop eating in spring, she'll get to her lowest point in June, and once she's hit that point, she generally gets back up to her normal weight by August, September time. So it relieves a bit of that stress because you know, okay, this is your gecko's feeding behaviour. So it does pay to write down their weights. Anyway, I hope this video has helped, and thank you very much for watching.